Hello, everybody. As you know, many business aircraft are flying significantly less during the current COVID-19 emergency. But even if they're sitting on the ground inactive, these valuable assets still need to be managed carefully, and they have to be kept ready to operate at any time. Today we're joined by Robert Fisch, who is Chief Aviation Operations Officer with Luxaviation Group, and his company manages and operates aircraft around the world. And Robert is joining us from the company's headquarters in Luxembourg. So, Robert, first of all, approximately how much less are the aircraft that the Luxaviation manages and operates flying in this situation? And are these changes mainly due to restrictions on travel, or because the owners and the customers simply have less need and desire to travel for the moment?
Hello, Charlie. And actually, you find me at home. For once, I'm not at the office. That is something new, and I think, and this will also be part of the answer, I think, to this good question. So are we flying less? Yes, of course, substantially less, but I think it needs to be differentiated. So we are active in the charter market, but we are flying also a lot and mainly for our owners, which is the biggest part of the business, as well as also governmental contracts. So on the governmental contracts, the flying is not impacted as much on the restriction as the rest of the flying. On the charter, I think it's pretty clear the industry is taking a very severe hit at the moment. So last month, I think there were a few peaks of productivity in the charter market, but I think that has now calmed down over April, and I don't expect it to come back until the end of this crisis. Mm-hmm. So on the restrictions, I think was the second part of the question. I would not look at it as a restriction, but looking at the beginning of the crisis, how it developed, we have different dispatch centers across the world, from Singapore to Mexico. And so we're constantly monitoring the situation. And it was not necessarily restrictions, but I would look at it more like travel bans, because from the moment that you are closing the EU 28 or 27 plus 1, whichever you want to look at it, and then you are keeping some pouches open, then I would not look at it anymore as a restriction, but a ban. But what is important is also that everybody takes its own decision. First of all, the only capital that we have is our health. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that we cannot buy, and I think that is then up to everybody to make his own educated decisions whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. We have trained our crews in for this kind of situations. That is not something that is new. Our crew health precautions have already covered this kind of issues, viruses. So also the disinfection processes of our airplanes were already included for some time. So this is not something new, but you need to adapt to this pandemic.
Yeah, good point. And you've already mentioned some of the expertise that your teams have, which is a significant part of this. But nonetheless, I'm guessing some of the aircraft owners who you support, they may now find themselves wondering or asking themselves, why do I still have an aircraft? You know, I have all this valuable asset sitting on the ground and I can't use it so much. So at a time like this, how would you say a company like yours adds value by protecting these assets and making sure that they stay something that is worthwhile to the owner?
An aircraft operating management agreement is not a short-term relationship. That is a long-term relationship. So most of our owners, we have been together in the business for quite a considerable number of years. It is interesting to see sometimes when you meet an owner and says, well, this is now my 4th or 5th aircraft review. Mm-hmm. And when you think that the economical lifespan of the airplane is around 5 to 7 years, you multiply that by number of aircrafts, then it is a generation actually that you have been doing together. So the communication is, I think, essential. If you compare this, and allow me to take this comparison, but to a wedding, I think the biggest secret to have a successful wedding is communication, and the same thing with the on every long-term relationship. So it needs to be open communication. We need to make sure that everybody knows what we are doing, because from the outside, you could think now, oh, they're sitting now all at home on the garden, and are sunbathing. Actually, I must say that our team worldwide has been extremely busy in the last couple of weeks, because you need to, apart the relationship that you have with your owners and other clients and customers, you need also to entertain. You want also to entertain the owner, the relationship that you have also with your providers. So, and there you need to have a constructive and open dialogue to them. So one of the items, for example, is then you are looking to renegotiate some of the contracts that you have.
Yeah.
Of course, you are trying to remove everything which is a calendar-based fee and try maybe to push them more into a yearly review. Of course, training is a big question mark where we need then to come up with solutions. But the idea, the main idea is just to keep a very open line of communication, and then also hear them out. What are their considerations? And I must say it works pretty well. I have not heard of many owners who were thinking about selling the aircraft due to the coronavirus. Or actually due to this crisis, as consequence of this crisis. But this was already a process that had started before. Or they are looking for replacement aircraft. Maybe the replacement aircraft will not be a new one, but will be maybe a pre-flown aircraft. This is something that we need then to adapt as their operator.
Good point. And you mentioned their communication with service providers and vendors of different sorts. It sounds almost as if this has to be an ongoing relationship with everybody in what you might call a value chain. In other words, not just Luxaviation, but the people you work with. You create that value proposition around the aircraft. And by working together, you can maintain that even in an exceptional situation like today.
Absolutely. Not only with the vendors, clients, but also a little bit with our whole industry. We are participating quite heavily in EBAA, in ABAA, in Gamma, and so on. So this is also an open discussion that you need to have with the civil aviation authorities, Ministry of Transport, and so on around, so that we have an optimized solution, or at least a comfortable solution for everyone. So that's why we, at the beginning of the crisis, Patrick Hansen and Christophe Lapierre came up with the idea of a solidarity initiative mostly for the European businesses aviation, so the EBAC initiative, which where we had quite a few requests. And it created also the possibility to have a more open discussion with people that you usually would consider as competitors. But at the end of the day, we are an industry, and we need to look at this as an industry as a whole to get through this crisis. If we are trying to do everybody's our own little kitchen, that's not going to work. This is now a crisis that we need to be all together in it.
Yeah, good point. And just touching on a few specific things, obviously, if an aircraft is not flying at all or it's not flying so much, well, still there are certain maintenance requirements, I suppose, for that aircraft. And you mentioned pilots. They have to have current training approvals, I suppose. So are you trying to be intelligent in how you do the right amount of maintenance, how you maintain training in an efficient way? And are the authorities allowing any sort of flexibility in this exceptional situation?
So I must say that the authorities have adapted very quickly to the situation. On first of all, on the maintenance side, this was a discussion that we had not only with the ownership of the airplanes, but also with the OEMs, as well as also with the maintenance program managers. So, and this was then the discussion. So what are we going to do from now? So you know that some of the maintenance programs, they will only pay, let's say, for the maintenance if you arrive to a certain amount of hours and not before that, or to a certain calendar date. And there has been great flexibility, and for that I'm very thankful. So many aircraft have joined the maintenance centers, so that we could do already some maintenance that was only due in the summer or on the next months. So that was a very first success, and a very much needed success. So the second part was the Civil Aviation Authority, and I must tell you, we are going from Mexico to New Zealand and everything in between, and I must really admit that it was quite surprising, the flexibility and the rapid response that we could get from the authorities. So we have a very privileged relationship with EASA, and you could see within a couple of days we had right away the tools that would give us the flexibility to extend some qualifications, to have the possibility to extend some certificate of airworthiness on some authorities and so on. So the authorities made an absolutely fantastic job on that, and they were also very receptive to our request. And the way it worked was really, I mean, within Gamma, EBAA, and BAA and the other forums, was really, what can we do for you now? We know that this is going to last. How can we now protect this industry? And I must say, absolutely hats off. Great job on them.
Good. Well, that's very good to hear. Now, we're both old enough to remember other situations like the last major financial crisis that started around 2008 and 2009. We're both sadly old enough to remember the 9/11 situation. Overall, would you say this is one of the most challenging professional situations in aviation that you've ever faced?
I guess you must be referring to my white hair.
No comment.
So, this is a question that I have been asked quite frequently the last couple of days. And, I must honestly say no. And I tell you why. Because of the management team that we have at Luxaviation Group. So I can tell you that 9/11, I was on that day, I was flying between Concord, North Carolina, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I remember that day very well. I was actually the last flight in the air in the US at the time. 2008, I think that's a little bit closer to us. That was a tremendous hit for our industry. So, and this one too, but I think this one, I must say that due to the vast expertise in our management team, everything came back together quite quickly. Like suddenly in the Tetris, you have the right structure that falls into place, and it is still a huge amount of work, and you have to come up with new ideas. But we just have a fantastic team that makes it possible to go through this crisis.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And then finally, probably the most impossible question of all, really. Do you have any sort of personal instinct for how and when the industry might begin to return to normal?
Shall I take out the crystal ball?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I have. I mean, that is a very difficult question to answer. So, are we going to return to normality? The first thing is, what is normality? So, it is very difficult to say. So, are we gradually return to a way that we can operate? I think yes. I think that we have also some. I think that we need to accept that there will be some changes. You mentioned the two first crises earlier. If we go back to the first decade of this millennium or this century, we had certainly to be focused as business aviation quite a lot on everything which is safety management. So then the second decade, we had to focus and invest a lot into everything which is security related. And just to keep it also, with an S and a Y at the end, I think on the next decade, we will have to invest and work a lot on everything which is salubrity. I think that this is those are going to be I don't know what's now the next decade after that, but I think that we will have to look at an increase of regulation on everything which is health related, even if our airplanes are pretty well protected with already the HEPA filters who have been necessary which are mandatory for years now, decades now. But I'm sure that we will, each crisis has one promise at the end of the crisis is that there will be a new set of regulation that will make flying more expensive, that's for sure. Yeah. So that has been a constant for the last 50 years, I would say. If you look, each decade had then its adaptation of avionics, of airplane design, of consumption, and so on. I think which is normal. It makes us, it gives us the possibility to evolve. To come back now to your question, I would say that business aviation will be the first to fly once it opens, simply because of the efficiency that we present and the lower infrastructure that we need.
Yes.
But when this is going to happen, we're going to find out.
Yeah, of course, we must all be patient, but clearly you mentioned the ability of business aviation to bounce back. Professional experience management of aircraft and resources is clearly the foundation for what you're describing there. So, Robert, thank you for spending time with us today. Clearly, these are truly exceptional circumstances, and it's so helpful for us to get an inside track on how you and your colleagues are helping to make this at least somewhat more manageable than it would otherwise be. So
well, Charlie, the last interview that we had was in front of a beautiful airplane at eBase.
You're right.
I hope that the next one will be again next to a beautiful airplane.
I believe it will be, absolutely. And in the sunshine, hopefully, too. So there we go. Great to see you, Robert. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be in touch very soon, I'm sure.
Keep safe and take good care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this AIN video. Please like, subscribe, and share it if you've enjoyed it. Also, visit AINonline.com for all the latest on the aviation industry.